C and D of Unit 5. So, we're going to talk about the economy. Remember we spoke about how peasants, because of the new technology, could finally save enough money and maybe one day send one of their sons to the city to learn a trade and become part of the middle class, the bourgeoisie, the urban middle class. We're going to talk about trades now. So, a trade is the same as a craft. Here's a definition. A job that uses specific knowledge. So, it's not that the people who are cheesemakers are super smart necessarily, but what they do, they know very well, and you or I could not do that, right? It takes years and years and years of training. So we're talking about things like cheesemakers, bread makers, right? Shoemakers, blacksmiths, people who work with iron to make like the shoes of horses, things like that. Okay, construction builders, carpenters, stonemasons, weavers, dyers, right? All of the craft work that needs to be done. So, the way this was structured was with guilds. You remember the word in Spanish? Gremios. That's what guilds means. Each one controlled the entire industry of that craft. So you would have a cheesemaker's guild that controlled all of the cheese making in that city and very oftentimes had a larger association with other cities. Okay? So it could be a local guild that would be small and less powerful, or it could be all around the Spanish cheesemakers guild, right? That controls what you can call age, how long it has to age before you can call it young or old, or right, all the terms that we use for things like cheese or wine, for example, to make sure that everything is done the right way. But they also control the workers a lot. So there were associations of craft workers who practiced the same trade. We're talking about the 12th century on, okay? So 1100. Members supported each other, so they helped each other. How? For example, if a member died, they had kind of a life insurance and they would maintain his family, right? So the wife and children wouldn't have to starve to death, basically. That's an example. They had hospitals set up. They looked after the well-being of their members in general. They also set wages, right? And they generally tried within their own industries to keep their wages pretty good. Wages are how much money you get, right? And nowadays it means per hour that you work, right? You had to be in the guild to work in a trade, so you couldn't just show up in Valencia and say, look, I'm in Valencia, I'm a Valencian cheesemaker. No, you have to go to the guild, be trained by their guild masters for years and years and years until they decide that you are good enough to be a cheesemaker, okay? They had to follow the accepted practices about the products they made, so the exact materials, manufacturing processes, selling prices, and working hours, okay? So, I don't know if we'll have time this year, but in other years we've done debates about if guilds are good or bad. Do they make a better product? Many times yes, because they control the quality, right? But if someone were very creative and wanted to invent something new about the product, could he do it if we have to always abide by these rules? No. Okay, so there's good and bad things about it. Alright, the workshop is owned by the guild master. It's usually the bottom floor of his house, and he lived above it. So, he owns the raw materials, he runs the whole business, right? And then he has normally 2 or more people who work under him. The journeymen are normal workers, okay? They get paid by him, and if they work for years and years and years and years, they could produce a masterpiece, which is a word we still use in English to say like a perfect, usually we use it for a piece of art, but in this case it could be a perfect shoe, perfect cheese, whatever the product is, right? And they present it to all the guild masters in that guild in that city, and if they say, wow, this man made a perfect cheese, he now gets to be called a guild master and he can set up his own workshop, right? This is after years and years of studying, and he would have to finance this work by himself, work after hours, so after the whole day of working, he goes home or stays in the shop and works some more, his own thing, right? And then it has to be approved. So the guild masters didn't necessarily always approve of the ones, even if they were good, because they don't want too many guild masters, right? We don't want too many excellent master cheesemakers in the same city, where the price of the cheese can go down, right? There's more competition. So if you were a journeyman, yes, you got paid, but you kind of had a raw deal until you could become a master. But before you even became a journeyman, you were an apprentice. Okay? An apprentice is someone who's there to learn. You did not earn any money. Okay? You spend years just learning, so kind of working for free. right? You do a lot of labor, yes, you're learning, you're getting your education, but basically this is where a peasant family saved up the money to send them to the city, and they convince a guild maker to take them on as an apprentice. Only if they show promise that he thinks that they'll be able to become a journeyman someday. So you're talking about like a little boy who works his fingers to the bone and then sleeps on the floor of the workshop usually, right? Because he is there just happy to be there, basically. Right. So, trade. Peasants sold wheat, meat, fruit in weekly markets. We talked about how they finally have a little bit more food, so they could, because of the new farming technique, so they could make a little bit of money in the trade fairs. And then there were some big trade fairs that were really famous that people came from all around to go to. They lasted for weeks, where merchants from different regions came to sell valuable products, like people from Champagne brought the champagne, right? Textiles. The famous merino wool was brought from Castile, things like that. And this is super important. This led to the profession of money changer. Why? Because you have many different kinds of coins from all over the world now. Remember that all of the local barons, the vassals, were printing their own money in a lot of this time. So you have tons and tons of coins. So somebody had to be there to say, 2 of this is worth 1 of this, right? I will change it for you, I'll take a little bit of commission. So that person had to have a lot of money to begin with, accumulated lots of money, right, by charging interest, by a tiny bit, like commission we'll call it. So if you needed money, where would you ask for money? The money changer, right? This begins banking, right? Because nowadays, who do we ask for money if we need money? The bank. And they give you a loan, and you pay them back with interest. Well, that started at this time. Okay? They also began, along with military orders, to keep safe places all around Europe where you could deposit your money, get a small note, right? Kind of like a personal check. That says, for example, you have deposited money in the Lombards Bank. The Italians were famous for this. The Lombards, the Bardi, right? So if you have a Lombard bank in Florence and you deposit your money there, you could go to Artois in France, and if there's a Lombard bank there, you just show them your note and they give you the same amount of money. So it's much safer than traveling around with all kinds of cash and coins and heavy things that could be stolen, right? Okay, foreign trade develops immensely. We now have bigger, faster ships and the astrolabe and the compass. Remember, the Moors traveled the desert by night, so because it was too hot during the day, so the only way that they could find their way was by the stars, because there's no landmarks in the desert. So they were experts at it, and that technology was applied to seafaring. So we have Southern Europe and the Central and Northern routes. Right? The Central Northern Europe was dominated by the Hanseatic League, an alliance of trading guilds that established and maintained a trade monopoly along the coast of Northern Europe. So this is basically a merchant guild, right? Which is a little bit different than a craft guild because the craft is trade. Okay? So they would protect each other. They were going big fleets of ships, right? And altogether they would get a little bit of money and hire some private ships to go a little before and a little bit after and protect them from pirates or anything else that might happen, right? They insured each other. So because they were safe and a good method, right, they started to dominate trade. So they sold their products in Western Europe, wheat, furs, iron, and brought back wool, salt, wine, right, to the north. Okay. Part D, society, a few changes as we have this big move to the cities, right? The nobility continue to have privileges, and some stay on their feet in the countryside. The ones who moved to the cities started to build little palaces, right, and become part of the royal courts. So these are people that go along with the king or with the high noble of whatever city it was, right, and kind of have their life with them. Maybe they do some small amount of work, but pretty much all the fun continues for the nobles like the so they don't work too hard. For the clergy, many bishops moved to cities, right? We get the appearance of mendicant religious orders. So these are friars who lived from begging or working, but they couldn't own property. So they took a vow of poverty. Why? Because greed is a sin, right? Although the church was extremely wealthy at this time, after being for centuries and centuries the only sane people who were organized enough to keep Western Europe from falling into God knows what, right? Remember in the Dark Ages, the only people who could really govern were the church. So, of course, governing, you accumulate a lot of money, And some people within the church started to say, that's not very Christian to have so much money. We're going to make our own religious order, and we're going to renounce all personal property. So we can work, and if there's no work, we will beg, just enough to eat, but we are not going to start accumulating wealth because we think it's not very Christian. Okay? So they're very principled people. Right? Then the peasants, plenty continued just as they were, right? And as we said, some fled for the cities where they could become a craft worker, trader, and have a better life with lots and lots of effort, right? All right. Very important that we understand that this is the beginnings of what's going to become the most important societal change, right? From the Middle Ages to our society now. This is the emergence of the middle class, the bourgeoisie, okay? So you have two, these are the peasants, so not noble blood. They moved to the cities, they worked very hard, they started to accumulate some money, and some of them have lots of money, right? They're the high bourgeoisie. Powerful merchant or banking families, guild masters that control the city governments, right? These people had a place in the parliaments, okay? Why? Because we talked about last time, they moved so much money around that the Lord had to respect them because he was collecting tons of taxes from them on all their transactions, okay? Then you have the petite bourgeoisie, the people who work for them, like the apprentices, their servants, cleaners, things like that, okay? So you have upper and lower middle class. All right, how was life in medieval cities? Not that great still. Okay? They're organized around a town square. We think it's beautiful today, but to them it was pretty dirty and disgusting most of the time. Right? There was no sewer system still in a lot of places. Rubbish was just thrown out the window. They didn't really do a good job of collecting trash. But they were protected in the city. Right? They usually had walls. Like if you've been to Carcassonne, there's a wall around. We have them in Avila, we're going to see when we go. And what they would do, I mean, they were complete at the time. Some of them have obviously fallen apart now. And they would close the gate at night, so nobody could come in, no massacres, no surprises at night, okay? Noisy, dirty places, narrow streets, and no sidewalks.